I know for me, like, I'm Black. My whole family's Black. And there was a time when I had a little history of drug use. But like when I went into treatment, I noticed with me being Black trans women, they did not know how to assist me. Before I like even knew about Hillcrest or the community, I thought the only battle that I had with being Black was this like racism. I didn't realize that in the LGBTQIA community, me being a part of that community and Black was also another barrier. And so it was huge. It was a hard thing for me to accept. That's where I had to advocate for myself. So I had to educate myself to be able to tell people what I needed that was going to help me.
Mm.
It's sad because there are some people who just might not be able to do that, and it's just an unfair situation. But that's something I noticed. Even today, I remember this. I didn't come to Hillcrest until I was 23. And that's because the few times I would go out there, it wasn't a welcoming environment, What I seen did not look or represent or correlate with me. But I felt like I did not belong. That's something I never understood. That was back when I was identified as a Black gay man, Now that I identify as a Black trans woman, it's really like, oh my gosh. So about 3-4 years ago, I started doing a lot of community service. So like I was heavily involved with like nonprofit or community programs that were operating at Hillcrest, which is for the LGBTQ community. And so I was able to like meet and look and see, and even with that being said, I still, even though it's like I can go into Hillcrest and know a lot of people, I still don't feel welcomed due to my skin color, or I'm welcomed only because of the stereotype that Black men or Black trans represent in that community.
I've been out as a lesbian since I was 23 years old, and I just turned 40. But I lived 22 whole years of my life as just a Black woman. And specifically, I was a Christian, and I am a Christian. But the kind of Christian I was for that first 2 decades of my life was very fundamentalist, very devout, very strict in terms of, striving to live a life that is holy and righteous, while at the same time, from birth, being born with this natural love, affection, and, as I became an adult, obvious desire to be with women. So I kind of doubled down on Christianity in college, trying to rid myself of these thoughts. And that doubling down kind of evolved to an ultimate acceptance. At the time, my community was very Black, and I'm living in Atlanta, and I'm in the Bible Belt. It's the South. We go to this massive church. I was in a Christian sorority, all Black women. It was very, very Black. And then when the gay came out as truth and not something that I was trying to fix or change about myself, I pretty much lost my Black Christian community right away. So in Atlanta, I had to segregate myself. And the place that I felt safe being gay as a Black person was in these white lesbian circles in Atlanta. So the lesbian part of me merging with the Black, there was immediate conflict. When I moved to California, I was out. So I get to say, here I am, I'm Black and I'm lesbian. Love me and accept me. And it was pretty easy for me to find that in LA. Just go to any of the clubs in West Hollywood and you will find people that are like, hey girl, hey, or look like you. Making friends was much easier. I wasn't having to come out. I was just out and finding acceptance. And certainly living in Long Beach, it was not difficult to find Black culture. It was everywhere. It was not difficult to find the Black community, or if you wanted to go, you can find hair products. You know where to go in LA. Moving from that down to San Diego, those first few months was us looking at each other going, where's the Black community here? Like, lesbianism is not a problem, but your Blackness seems to be giving you some challenges here. So the first thing that I think we realized that was different is that the Black community is not really centralized in this city the way I have experienced it in other cities like in LA and Long Beach and Atlanta. And so you kind of had to spread yourself around to find the color, or the path that I took was I had to get really comfortable being the only person of color and only Black woman in a lot of the spaces that I was, moving through in San Diego.
If you don't know anyone here or don't connect with anyone, you don't know what culture events are going on. We never had anything to call our own. For example, when it came to the bars and the clubs, they may give us a night, but that was it. We were always added to what was going on. We have a lot of different people that's gifted in our community, but where do they get to express their talents? If we're thrown into what's already going on, it's already set up, it's already made, and they say, well, you guys can come. So that can be kind of difficult.
I really started to crave relationships, especially with Black people. One of my friends in Long Beach said, you should check out this promoter I know. She might be doing some events down there in San Diego. And she pointed me to Soul Kiss. And I didn't know anything about Soul Kiss at the time, but Soul Kiss was a group and they were hosting these women's events. They were Black, they were lesbian, they were hip hop, they were urban, and just kind of moving around these other different clubs. So I'll never forget the first time my wife and I were like, we found someplace to go, and we went to our first night out, and it just was our thing, it was our place. But I'm really glad that I did the digging around, and we were able to find that, even though it was small. But kind of the intimacy of the community made it a little bit more special.
I've only lived in Detroit, so I think comparatively it's easier being Black in Detroit than it is gay in Detroit, which is funny to me. But growing up as someone who was always like keeping my rainbow flag to myself in my chest, I think coming here was a release of like, I can be who I am and that can be okay. As far as my placement on the LGBTQ spectrum, but coming here also just made me really like dig into my Blackness as well, and it also made me miss what I had as far as like thriving in Black spaces in Detroit.
I had a lot of difficulties understanding what Blackness was. I never really felt Black enough for, a multitude of reasons. Either the way that I speak, my skin color. As I became just more educated and understanding what Blackness could be, then I started to become more comfortable with my own personal Blackness.
Growing up, my parents wanted to do a really good job of providing a better life for us. Maybe unfortunately, that life was a whiter life. I grew up in a predominantly middle-class white neighborhood. And so there was this sense, I remember growing up feeling like, man, I'm not Black enough to hang out with my Black friends at church. Like, I don't feel like I fit in there, but I'm clearly not white enough. And I'm constantly reminded that I'm not white. And also for me, like, I was gay. Like, it was just the stereotypes that society has placed on us that if you're Black, that you have to look a certain way, that you have to speak a certain way, that you carry yourself a certain way, and I didn't fit into that, so I didn't really know my place.
Let's talk about the so-called Black card. There are certain things that automatically qualify you as Black in the community, and if you don't fit in, then apparently you aren't really Black. Who said that? For example, you can't be Black and not like fried chicken. And don't you dare say that you don't eat watermelon, or you'll get crazy looks like you said you voted for Donald Trump or something. Many of these stereotypes developed because of racism, so continuing to perpetuate them only drives a bigger wedge between us. They allow others to define our Blackness instead of letting us make the rules for ourselves.